Hello, Capital Sci-Fi Con Virtual Edition 2021 fans. I hope you're having a thoroughly enjoyable day. It's been fantastic seeing you all interacting with each other within the group throughout the day. I've loved seeing your photos in between the Q&A panels. That's me just dropping everything on the floor there. I hope you've enjoyed the Disney panel that's just taken place as well. It was absolutely phenomenal to be joined by our guests from across the pond in America. And I really enjoyed listening to that and taking part in that as well. So now we're back with the Brewgooders. We've got a technical replacement with Jeff, so we should be able to hear him this evening. And we were joined by Joe Heeley and Ben Cullis. Thank you so much for coming along and taking part this evening. Without further ado, I will hand over to the Brewgooders, who will be asking the questions this evening. And if you want to send in your live comments, I will relay them at the end if we have enough time. So take it away, Brewgooders.
Cheers, Keith. Yeah, good evening and welcome to the second of our comic creator chats as part of Capital Sci-Fi Con. I'm Jeff. This is Colin. We are the Brewgooders. We do a weekly podcast about beer and comics where we drink and read and review. We often have guests on the show who either work in the brewing or the comics industry. And we're really, really honoured again to have members of the exceptional team behind 2020's hottest new anthology comic, The 77. We've got Joe Heeley, who is a lifelong comic fan with favourites including 2000 AD, Buster and Battle. And in 2019, she teamed up with other comic fans to create a new anthology comic in the style of the early 2000 AD, which would become known as The 77. She's an illustrator and artist in her own right, and she's recently turned her attention to writing and is producing a fantasy series which begins in issue 5 of the 77, and she'll be the editor of the new coming comic from the 77 Publishing Limited titled Pandora, which is going to be a comic homage to comics like Ginty and Misty.
Nice.
And we've also been, sorry.
Yeah,
Joe.
no, I was just going to say, yeah, that's correct.
Yes.
Jumping in there.
Good. And we've also got Bensky with us. Ben Cullis is a children's tutor with a brilliant eye for animation, who's just launched this brand new retro comic last year, The 77. He's assembled a team of artists, writers, and comic editors who have worked on everything from Roy the Rovers, Eagle and the Beano, through 2000 AD and Judge Dredd. So yeah, thank you so much for joining us, guys.
Oh, fantastic! Thank you for thanks for the invite. Brilliant. I think you've had a great day.
Oh, the guys have done fantastic. Keith and the team have done phenomenal. It's been amazing. How are you guys doing?
Yeah, all good. All good. Looking forward to some of the questions that are going to be coming through.
Awesome. Yeah, amazing. Ben, do you want to start us off with telling us what is the 77 and where did it start?
Sure. So it started about 2.5 years ago, really, in a conversation, but it's been in the back of my mind for several years now in terms of wanting to go back to something that I did 30 odd years ago, which was working comics. And it's just about working with the right people it's all fallen into place, really, insofar as navigating or working with people in a Facebook group, which is quite a popular one, 1977 to 2000 AD. The name spins off from that. So Joe and Dave and Steve Bull and Dave Bedford, we've all pretty much just had conversations where obviously we were seeing a lot of talent coming through on the show, meeting people. We kind of do it like our group's mainly like a magazine. We kind of have themes and we have competitions and we sort of run threads, and it's pretty well organized. And because of that, we've got quite a lot of notable creators and artists. So we generally don't go on about the names, but you know, there's an awful lot of 2000 AD staff, past and present there. You know, it was funny yesterday on a thread, Pat Mills was talking about a young lad in 1986, or someone said in 1986, I went to see these two twins. And their dad called me to his office, and it was Pat Mills. And then Pat Mills came in down the thread a few minutes later, and this guy went, "Oh, I didn't know you were in the group." And I just kind of made the point that we don't really kind of go on about all of that sort of stuff. It's just sort of very friendly. And anyway, so we just wanted to make something more of it, really. And even in the time that the 77's been around, it's changed its focus quite a lot, obviously. Joe will tell you, we were all supposed to meet up in May last year. At Lawless. that's what the 77 was going to be. It was going to be a convention comic, and we were going to haul some boxes and, you know, turn up at a convention, which we kind of work quite closely with, and next year hopefully we'll be sponsoring. And of course it didn't go ahead, so we couldn't cancel. We released the comic, and obviously we've been focusing massively on our online presence and learning how to do sales online, and it's gone really well. You know, with the directors and myself, we're just here pretty much enabling talent to get stuff done, and it's moving along. So Joe's will be the third title. We've got Blazer, which comes out, well, it's not out officially yet, but it did land on doorsteps apart from Colin's today. There's a picture on Facebook of an empty table. But Colin, I was doing some other stuff for you today, I know. Your t-shirt is boxed, and I'm so sad to see you're not wearing the several 77 t-shirts that you own. You pretty much are you're obviously a collector of t-shirts, yeah? I think we've lost him.
He's on mute.
You're on mute, Colin.
Yeah, it wasn't me.
How did that happen? How did it go on mute? Who switched?
I don't know.
Yeah, I'm a collector of comics, as well as t-shirts, and they're all nicely ironed and put away for you know, special occasions.
Yeah. And
so
then,
anyway, you're telling us a little bit about how the 77 came about, but what kind of stories can people see in that? You know, if they haven't picked up a copy yet, how can they get a copy?
I mean, it's an anthology in the widest terms. So it has sort of space opera, science fiction, fantasy. It has down to earth kind of, you know, street stories. It has historic stories. Generally speaking, we're trying to just, you know, see what people want to produce, and we do quite a lot of surveying now. So when we go our Kickstarters, you've got quite a good chance to talk to the few hundred people who back you. So we use surveys. We had an interesting one out today, Joe, didn't we? Have you seen that one that Steve's done? Yeah,
we did.
So unlike the little coupons you'd cut out of, you know, comics of yore, we can do digital stuff now and find out what people like. And obviously we're looking for new talent all the time. People do come and people do go. People can't always stick around for a long time, but it is the notion that we're going to have spin-offs from the comic of the kind of house stories. So Division 77 is Future War. V is sort of time, I wouldn't say it's time travel, but it involves kind of barbarian gladiatorial stroke kind of space things going on. We've got The Cell written by Bambos. Unfortunately, I've got to apologize on his behalf. I can't go into too many details, but a member of his family is unwell tonight, so Bambos can't attend, and he was going to be with Joe, and he's written this strip called The Cell with I just think one of the most incredible artists that have come out in the last couple of years. And Andrew Sawyers himself would tell you he's really raw. You know, he really is learning his craft as well, but his stuff, and it's Joe's background there. That's the wraparound cover. It's not particularly clear to see, but you know, it's an amazing graphics, and his energy he puts in there, and his use of color and everything is just absolutely phenomenal. So we got these things happening, and then obviously we got Blazer, and Colin's very self-deprecating, not having mentioned the fact that he's a very talented artist himself as well as a writer. And we've had great praise for your strip, Colin. So a lot of people have said a lot of good things about Derringer and Son.
Oh, I'm so pleased to hear about that.
Welcome.
I mean, let's face it, it's all down to the writer, though.
Well, who is that writer? So you tell us yourself, Colin. You worked with him.
So the writer is a former Tharg, a former editor of 2000 AD, which you amazingly got on board for that. So Steve McManus. So he's written all of the strips in Blazer, and then it's been illustrated by a whole bunch of different artists.
Yeah, absolutely. And we obviously, you know, you could headline with Dan Cornwall, and you know, we've all been on shows with Dan, and he's a lovely chap. But it's funny, isn't it? Did you see that thing that came up the other day? I think it's only 2 or 3 years since he stopped driving buses.
Yeah, that's right.
Yeah.
Before we did Rock the Red. And I just get the feeling it's going to be amazing watching some people do similar things to Dan Cornwall from us, from the 77. And, you know, it won't be because we afford them the lifestyle that they're going to be able to just stop doing comics. I mean, someone will come in for them. Or potentially, you know, when shops all open again, and our hope is, all I'm going to say is there's a geometric shape, 4-sided shape, comic dealer they've been chatting to us this week, and that's all I'm going to say.
Oh, okay.
Okay. And it's not just about this country. Now, it doesn't mean that suddenly the 77 or Blazer or Pandora, or we're going to do an Oink style comic next year, comedy one. Okay, so I'm speaking with Lou Stringer and guys, he's introducing me from the original Oink, and Mark Jackson may well be involved, and Morgan Gleave, our artists, and lots and lots of people are going to apply as soon as I start mentioning that. So we just want to get lots of comics out, and yeah, if we could start selling them in shops, it'd be awesome. But my heart goes out to anyone who has, you know, a business at the moment, and hopefully from April the 12th, it's going to be a good thing that we get back to the comic shops. So yeah, the 77 is going to continue. We were going to be bi-monthly, but in effect, what we've done now, we've decided to go with 4 comics a year, go with that quarterly, but we'll produce 2 guest comics, and we're going to, Steve Bull, one of the directors, is also producing our first annual this year. It's going to be a proper annual as well, you know, like the old ones, you know, with the price clip on the front inside page and such like. And what are you reaching for there, Jeff?
Oh,
what you got?
Yeah, well, I've just got my annuals over my shoulder. So
yeah, absolutely. So it's good. We're sort of giving. So Joe's going to be taking up, you know, editorial work with Pandora. I'm going to stop now because it's kind of enough about 77. Because you know, the fact is that I'm just going to say it's all about us as a team respecting each other's strengths, but working together. So we have meetings every week. We do Zoom meetings every week on a Monday, and the communications is just amazing. And, you know, to be honest with you, I don't think, personally speaking, I could have really done anything better this year, the last year. It's not been easy either. You know, I teach, and it's been a very, very strange year. Joe, in fact, has just moved. So, you know, we've all got life to continue. But I think the fact is that we're just looking forwards and really going to just like push. And who knows, maybe one of the projects will really, really, really take off. Who knows? So it's very exciting, very exciting.
Yeah, it sure is exciting. I mean, the comic came out of nowhere for me as not really a member or a kind of a loose member of the group before, you know, and just kind of seeing this comic suddenly come out of nowhere, and then appear on Kickstarter, and it just got me quite excited as being an old time 2000 AD fan, and then just seeing some of the names that were attached to it as well was quite exciting. Something I just want to ask about, and you kind of touched on it there, because we might have people in the audience who are budding comic creators, writers, artists, and I know, having tabled it at Sci-Fi Con before, that I've had people come up to me and talk to me about, you know, making their own comics and things. So it sounds like there might be opportunities for kind of up-and-coming talent with the 77.
Well, there definitely is, and because I've got to say, to be honest with you, the 77 is pretty much booked up for years hence. I'm going to ask Jo if she would like to talk about potentially, if you want to do sequential art, what she's interested in looking at and how you can get in touch with her about it, because it's going to be Pandora and it's going to be the other titles which are going to be freer sooner. You know, we've just released we released at Christmas number 4. 5's going to kickstart in a couple of weeks, but we've already penciled in up to number 9 and 10. You know, we have to work that far ahead to get continuity and strips organized and stuff. So, you know, I think the first thing I would just say before I hand over is don't expect a strip necessarily to go straight in. You know, if you're dealing with a comic title, and just because someone says, oh, we haven't got room at the moment, that's not someone saying we're not interested. It's just the management of pagination and working through strips and seeing what works well. But yeah, so that's my experience with the 77. But I'm going to also be fascinated to hear how Jo's coping with it, because she's been extremely busy. So what do you say, Jo? What's going on with Pandora at the moment?
Yeah, for sure. Jo, and this sounds like we're going to be opening up a box of hope with Pandora. So let's hear about that.
Oh, you've been wanting that for ages, Colin.
Funnily enough, that's what the title sort of stems from. Obviously, you know, 2020, we've lived through some extraordinary times. I never envisaged being involved in a successful comic, living through a pandemic, a global pandemic, and then moving on top of that as well, and moving during restrictions and goodness knows what. So with Pandora, it's a comic which is more a knowing nod to Misty and Ginty. I was really lucky, and I will hold my hands up here. I could switch between both worlds in comics. So I could read the Battle, I could read 2000 AD, I could read all the comics that my brothers were reading, but I could also read comics like Tammy, Ginty, Misty, without any sort of fear. Whereas my brothers would be like, "No, it's a girl's comic."
But do you know what, Joe? I was kind of the same. I was a big fan of what were called the girls' comics back then. Let's face it, that's what they had on their under their titles. But I was a paper boy, so I did a delivery. So I used to read Misty and Ginty on my way around. It was the longest paper round. It took anybody else half an hour, but it took me about an hour because I was reading thumbing through everybody else's comics. So I was a bit of a secret fan of those comics at that time. And I have to say that the writing in those comics was way superior to some of the other comics that were around at the time.
Well,
a lot more subtle, and yeah, absolutely agree, Colin.
Yeah, there were stories that didn't end up in a punch-up.
Yeah, exactly.
What I would say is the annual for me that sort of kick-started like my interest into, like a keen interest into weird and wonderful and science fiction and fantasy and horror, was being given Ginty 1984. Now that Christmas annual had some of the weirdest strips, and I mean really, it was a bit above my age, if that makes sense, but I absolutely loved it, and I've actually still got a copy. I still think of that as sort of that some of the strips in there that deal with demons, that deal with possessed handkerchiefs. Believe it or not, I know it sounds a bit, but these possessed handkerchiefs were brilliant. But like I say, it's those comics that sort of led me down the path that I'm at now, interested in fantasy, horror, and whatnot. But like I say, I was quite lucky in that I could switch between both worlds. I'll be quite honest, my dad used to read my comics, but my dad just didn't care. He was just dad, he'd just read anything. If he'd read the back of the shampoo bottle if he could. But my brothers were all just like, oh, Care Bears, ugh, and all this. But like I say, I could also read comics like 2000 AD, Scream. I know Dave would probably say Scream was his comic. But actually, Mom started getting Scream because I asked for it, as well as Oink. So with going back to Pandora, just setting the scene there, the idea is that it's a comic which is more a knowing nod than a straight out homage. I don't want something that is echoing anything of that time. There were certain things that happened in that time, certain roles that girls were sort of like edged into in these comics. So I wanted Pandora to be exactly that, just like wide reaching. So it's not necessarily a girls' comic, or I hate that word actually, using girls' comic. It's not female oriented, but it's wide open to everybody, anybody. So I've had a phenomenal amount of interest so far. I cannot believe the interest, and I cannot believe the wealth of talent that has been approaching me for this. In fact, I've already confirmed one writer so far, somebody who wrote one of my all-time favourite strips in 2000 AD, actually. So I will leave it at that. But that email went through this morning, and it's come back as a yes. So, like I say, to get that was amazing. But like going back to what Ben said, just because I might turn around and say not just yet to people, or not just quite what I'm looking for, don't give up hope, because we do have all these different publications coming out of the 77. I know that, like Ben's mentioned, like one of my favourite comics ever, Oink, we may be doing something on those lines, but there may be other genres coming out as well. So, we've got a number of directors, a number of people involved in the comic who might be taking sort of leadership of one of those comics. So, yeah, continue. If you've emailed me so far, continue to, just wait for me to get in touch with you. And if you haven't emailed me, do email me. It's pandora.comics comicanthology@gmail.com.
Fantastic, Joe. And I would just kind of reiterate kind of what you're saying. Get your stuff in. If you've got an idea, you want to get in, break into comics. Because I mean, myself, I haven't really been doing comics all that long. I'm very much a late starter when it comes to comics. I've been self-publishing for a few years, and then even before I started, or I had stories out with DC Thompson for Commando. I got the call from Ben and from other folk to illustrate and write for them, which has been great. So thanks for that opportunity to get involved in Blazer and work with all the amazing people that are working on that. So yeah, there's opportunities out there if people want to seek them out. And here's a great opportunity with this brand new comic Pandora, which is right up my street because I do love kind of supernatural kind of things, and I'm quite enjoying Penny Pentagram, which is one of the ongoing stories in the 77, which is kind of comedic, fun, but kind of slightly dark as well. Don't know how dark it's going to go. I'm looking forward to seeing the next issue. Actually, there's something. When is the next issue of the 77 out?
Okay, so issue 5 should be coming out for the end of April. Our official release date of issue 4 was, I think we went with January the 12th. So it's a little bit behind, but that's because we put Blazer in between. But we are then going to have another, so that's going to be 5. We've got 6 and 7 coming out as well before the end of the year. So yeah, they're going to be quite rapidly after each other. The talent's kind of already working on number 6. All the artwork for number 5's done. So if anyone who's thinking about following a Kickstarter and they think, oh, these things, you may have had experience where you waited a long time for it. Well, that's not our particular model. Like I said, we're not selling through shops, and until we can really sort of stand on our own 2 feet, we're using the Kickstarter model to, pretty much just bring out a comic as regularly as we can. So yeah, that's gonna come out in, where are we? What's the date? It's 13th. So it's gonna be 6 weeks time. So the Kickstarter starts a week on Friday. It's gonna last for 23 days. And we're gonna have to set ourselves a very challenging target this time, because we need to make sure that everybody gets a good deal out of it. It's hard when you've got an anthology with 20 people involved, 64 pages. Editorial takes up between 5 and 9 pages, depending on what we're doing with adverts and stuff. Printing costs have gone up 20% in the last 6 months. Postage, I mean, it's just unbelievable. It's just, I'm doing stuff today. So I'm doing all of the American and the bespoke pledges for Blazer. So GMC get my comics, or our distributor for that, and through their shops, and they got all the comics out today. But I reckon I've got £600 worth of American postage, and that's, you're looking at 35 parcels, that's all. So wow. They're coming out about £17 each now, and apparently it's double the way coming back. So there's been a lot of chat online about how Alex DeCampi and Duncan Jones's Maddie, the third, went with requests from backer kit and stuff to up the postage, and it's really out of people's hands. We have to have a disclaimer in the Kickstarter to say, if you're not prepared to pay air mail, which is twice the rate that we're saying, then you'll be on Surface, and Surface to the States takes 4 weeks normally, but during COVID it's taken up to 9 weeks.
Wow.
Because what's happening is it gets to a depot in the States within the first week, and then it's taking 8 weeks to get across the States. And then it's going the other way to Europe. I had someone contact me today about a t-shirt sale, saying they've just had contact with someone in France, because they were in France, saying they've just paid £35 duty on a £35 comic purchase. Did I know anything? And I'm like, no, I'm in the dark as anybody else. So, hopefully these things won't affect people too badly. But I did a Kickstarter chat with Tom Ward.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. Great guy, Tom, Merrick and the Elephant Man, and we were supposed, we were talking as sort of experts on kickstarting of the LICAF, the Lakes International, in the summer. And we both agreed, we did a presentation and stuff, and we said, obviously, once you're up and running and you've got a Kickstarter going, you know what you're doing, it's all great. But the biggest failure you can end up doing is if you don't get your postage right, you end up losing more money the more popular you are, because you don't get your postage right, you're paying to send stuff to people, and it can be absolutely phenomenal. So, you know, I mean, cardboard, it's just mundane things like cardboard has doubled in price. Stock of cardboard has doubled in price. So all your envelopes and backing stuff's gone up 50%.
Yep.
That's just crazy. And people say, well, you know, what does it cost to produce a comic? Well, that's that's the things that, you know, staples and paper and cardboard and post and, you know, photocopying and bills, and then you're trying to get some money to the creators. So you know, I'm just glad that we can do what we can. So you know,
for sure, it's a tough old business anyway, sort of independent comics, you know, and especially if you're not getting any kind of distribution deal or a good deal with printers, and you know, there's so much to it. But that's good to know for anybody that is thinking about you know, jumping into that. And a lot of people that do come along to comic conventions and the sci-fi con, they have some aspirations to be, you know, artists or writers perhaps, or even produce their own comics, because they see, you know, people like myself or Jeff that have got, you know, a table at a con with you know, a few comics there, and there are a lot of people with those kind of aspirations. They speak to the you know, the folk there that are comic creators and want to know about how to get into the business and things, but suddenly things have just gotten so much harder. I mean, Kickstarter has been great for you know, for getting some funding towards it, producing your comics, but obviously COVID's then limiting you actually getting out to actually see people, and sometimes that's the best way to actually sell stuff, is face to face. And you know, you guys will be hurting with that as well, not being able to get to cons and actually get together with some of the creators, which might be a big draw for a lot of the fans. And then being able to do that kind of sale, you know, face to face, to actually have a comic in your hand is different from just seeing it on a screen.
Yeah, well, we tailored the contents of the one that you're holding. That's issue 1, yeah?
2, I think it is, actually.
I beg your pardon. So if you care to, if you had issue 1 and you were to look at the contents of issue 1, we tailored issue 1 with regards to who was going to be attending the conventions we would be. So we would be able to do the promotion, and that was the part of the discussion all the way down the line. But of course, that's just completely gone now. So, you know, we send out comp issues and stuff to people, and what can they do with them? You know, we've worked really hard on building our social platforms, so we have that interaction with, you know, our base, or fans, if you want to call them that. But basically, they're people in groups who like buying comics, and you can do your marketing to a certain extent with them. But you know, the fact is that, yeah, you're absolutely right. I mean, we've applied for Thought Bubble. When is that? October, November? Everyone's hoping to goodness that it goes ahead, but you know, who knows? I mean, who knows? It's just going to be, you know. So
we're all feeling it, aren't we? There's I know, obviously, I've been to Capital Sci-Fi Con on numerous occasions, and I think just that lack of convention is something that we're all missing. I've got friends who cosplay, who have entered the cosplay competition for Capital Sci-Fi Con, and I think they're having a really nice Saturday, and their pictures look amazing. But just that the whole experience and everything that we regard as a really important aspect of that convention life is still just beyond our grasp, and it'll be yeah. I think you were saying about Thought Bubble. I think that's the one in my mind. Like, oh come on, that has to be. And then like Capital Sci-Fi Con, in my mind, is sort of the first Scottish convention of the year. So okay, yeah. Hopefully, we'll all be having a similar conversation to this, but as a discussion about history while we're all sitting at the bar in the foreign exchange, you know.
Well, there's so many people hurting, aren't there? I mean, I just think of the people who I meet at the cons, and you see who are signing and stuff, and it can be retired actors, or you know, you just say it, older creators. And I'm not saying they make an awful lot of money out of these things, but what they certainly do is they have a social life out of it, and they get about, and they have their friends they meet up with, as well as we do. And you think for everybody, it's just been scrubbed completely from people's lives. And as much as I love doing Zooms, they're great, and it's something you think about. What did we do one a year? You know, our very first one from 1977, a year ago, for us was like a major undertaking. And now we're just like, you know, I Zoom 2 or 3 times a day with quite a few people, you know, it's just chats now. But, and I know I know it's taking a place, and it's becoming more familiar to us. And I don't think it's going to go away, but hey, wouldn't it be great if we could all meet up and have a drink and have a chat and, you know, actually pass a comic to somebody or schmooze?
Yeah,
or whatever.
totally. I mean, it's going to happen. Let's face it, it'll happen sometime. It's maybe just a wee while off yet. I mean, we're having to do a virtual beer tasting in a couple of weeks' time, you know, on a Zoom call. But fortunately, what we've managed to do is team up with some local breweries, and one of them is able to sell tickets and then deliver the beer to people that want to take part in it. And we're sending out digital comics to them and stuff. So, you know, that's how things are going to be for the time being anyway. Hopefully, you know, in a few more months.
I wanted to ask one of you guys, what's the charity, please, that's involved? I'd like to know a little bit more about it. I understand that this is fundraising.
It's the children.
Yeah, it's the same charity that the Capital Sci-Fi Con support, which is
So
Children's Hospice
Children's Hospice
Scotland.
across Scotland. Yeah.
Fantastic.
Yeah, so they're supporting children with conditions, you know, that are going to affect their lives. I've been with some of the cosplayers up to Rachel House, which is one of the facilities that have not far from where I live, that is, you know, have nurses and play leaders, and in fact I know somebody that works there, and it's a fantastic experience to go and meet, you know, those kids there and the families, and give them whatever support. I went in costume as a Star Wars character, and I was wearing this big kind of mask so nobody could see my face. And this little lad, his mum wanted a photo of me with him, and he was sitting in a wheelchair. So I kind of got down on my knees to get on his level for the photograph. And he reached across and he grabbed me and gave me a huge hug. And his mum was in tears because she says he never does that. He doesn't have that kind of contact with people. And I had the big mask on, so nobody could see me, but I was welling up beneath that mask. And that just totally made it for me. That's why I support Keith and everything he does, you know, and go out to the events. And we're missing that as well, Keith. We're missing it, going out to the shopping centres and, you know, and collecting money and chatting with people, and seeing all the volunteers that are part of that. So that's the same charity that we're going to be supporting through our virtual beer tasting as well.
That is brilliant, isn't it? Absolutely.
Well, actually, speaking of cosplay, I've got to ask: have you seen any cosplay of characters from the 77 yet?
Well, my son's a designer, and he is going to be producing the Banksy kit.
All right.
So we are going to have the kind of trench coat with the spikes on.
So if I can just show that, there's Banksy there, your alter ego.
Yeah. I don't know if it's going to be me who's going to be dressed up, but I suppose it's going to be sized on me, so that's going to be a funny one.
No, we've had people. I think it was BP Johnson. He sent through a paper cutout of Shard from Division 77, like this amazing origami construct of this robot, and that's actually going to be, fingers crossed, appearing in the annual. So going back to how the old comic annuals used to be, where you'd have like little how to make a Santa out of a toilet roll and some cotton wool, that type of thing. We've got that appearing as well.
I mean, in the background of behind 77, there's some incredibly talented people, but people who we kind of meet and associate with as well. Yeah. So Steve Green designed our initial logo, which is the one just above Joe's head there. And I'd love to have a chat with people like, is it Steve Stilakani, who does basically work with Planet Replica and all those people. It'd be amazing if we could get some model stuff. But I mean, Neil Sims, who's been kind of crucial to the look of Banksy and quite a few of the characters, has done models which have sold, and people can contact Neil through the 77. He's got his own group and stuff, and he's such a talented guy. I just like to sort of call that out, that basically he did a character called Filthy Luca, which was created by Alan. What's his name, Joe? I've just forgotten.
Holloway.
Alan Holloway. So he was one of our first spreads in #1, and we've had, Neil had people from the States inquiring about buying these things. They sell for quite a lot of money, so we get these people involved. As for cosplay, I'd love it. I'd love to see some Division 77s or V. I'm not quite sure which one we're going to be looking at, having up, but that would be amazing. So
I know Andrew Sawyers would love a Valkyrie from the cell.
Yeah.
If you know that character, she's
I'd like to see Andrew
badass.
as Valkyrie. Yeah, I think Andrew makes a very good Valkyrie.
Well, there's a challenge to any cosplayers who are watching, tonight. Get a copy of the 77, find some characters.
Do you know what,
turn into a costume.
Colin? That is a fantastic idea. I think we're going to back that up right
Yeah.
now, and we would absolutely love to feature people with some suggestions. If they want to get in touch with us and we'll find out more about designing stuff for it, we would love to see some pictures, and we would feature it in upcoming comics.
Yeah.
And I tell you what, that's a brilliant idea. I'm writing it down right now. Okay,
Because you guys were saying that if people go and join the group tonight on the back of this, you were going to make a little offer to them.
As soon as the chat ends, I'll pop a post in the 77 comic group that's on Facebook. So that's the 77 comic group. And just, if you've been watching the panel, just drop your name there. Make sure that you've got a Gmail account for, we'll offer 1 and 2 for.
Oh, definitely.
It will be digital edition, but yeah, completely free. We'll offer that. So like I say, I'll do that as soon as on.
And then cosplayers will have their references for making some nice costumes as well. That'll be brilliant to see.
That's fantastic. Thank you so much for that kind offer for our watchers this evening. As you know, Colin, we have got lots of amazing cosplayers who construct and build their own costumes. So I think when someone throws down a gauntlet, it's usually picked up and run with, and they usually come up with something phenomenal. So fingers crossed we come up with something for you guys in the near future. I just want to say thank you to Joe, and thank you to Ben for coming on and taking part in our panel this evening. I want to say thanks to Jeff and Colin, the Brewgooders, for coming on and hosting the comic panels this afternoon. There was quite a few comments that were coming through, just reminiscing, saying that there's nothing like having a comic in your hands physically. And someone else was saying, I loved Oink. So yeah, they've just been chatting away about comics in their comments section. So thank you so much for being involved this evening. Ladies and gentlemen, we are about to head into another music set from Blues Harvest. I'm sure you guys will thoroughly enjoy that. Before we head into the Predators Q&A panel with Louis Ozawa and Oleg Taktarov. That is going to be a phenomenal panel. I'm looking forward to seeing that. It's nearly at the end. We've been going since 10 o'clock this morning. We were on till 10:30 this evening. We will have our party session with DJ Level Up Leroy, and then there will be an end of show pre-recorded interview with myself, Alexa Hill, and Falcon Thacker about the history of Capital Sci-Fi Con and how it came across. So thank you, Joe.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ben.
Thank you very much. Thank you.
And thank you, Brewgooders.
Hey,
Ladies and gentlemen, see you all again soon. Thank you very much. Bye.
Cheers.
Bye.